The recent decision by the World Boxing Association, WBA, to rank Jake Paul as the number 14 cruiserweight in the world has ignited a firestorm of controversy within the boxing community. This move has left fans, fighters, and analysts alike questioning the integrity of the sport, with many viewing it as a blatant prioritization of fame and financial gain over merit and sporting achievement. The outrage stems from Jake Paul's relatively short and unconventional boxing career, which has primarily consisted of bouts against non-boxers, retired fighters, or lesser-known opponents who posed little challenge. For a sport built on the principles of hard work, dedication, and competition, the WBA's decision feels like a betrayal to many who hold boxing dear. Jake Paul, a former YouTube star turned boxer, has built a polarizing persona in the sport. His journey began with fights against fellow influencers and athletes from other disciplines, such as MMA fighters and retired boxers, rather than established professionals in the cruiserweight division. His most notable opponents include Tommy Fury, a novice boxer from a famous fighting family, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., a former champion who has struggled with personal issues and inactivity, and Mike Tyson, a boxing legend well past his prime and in poor physical condition. Additionally, Paul has faced relatively unknown cruiserweights like Andre August and Ryan Borland, names unfamiliar to even the most dedicated boxing fans. These victories, while technically wins, have done little to convince purists that Paul deserves a place among the world's top cruiserweights. The crux of the criticism lies in the WBA's decision to elevate Paul to a ranking that places him among legitimate contenders who have spent years honing their craft through grueling training camps and competitive bouts. Boxing is a sport where rankings are traditionally earned through consistent victories against credible opponents, often in high-stakes environments. For many, Paul's inclusion in the top 15 feels like a mockery of this process. Critics argue that his resume lacks the substance to justify such a ranking. His loss to Tommy Fury, one of the only active boxers he has faced, further undermines his claim to a top spot. Fury, despite his limited experience, is not considered a top-tier boxer, yet he managed to defeat Paul, highlighting the gap between Paul and the division's elite. The fight that has drawn the most scrutiny is Paul's recent victory over Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., once a respected middleweight champion. Chavez Jr. has been plagued by personal struggles, including time in rehabilitation, and has not been a serious contender in years. During their bout, Chavez Jr. offered minimal resistance, throwing just 36 punches over the first 5 rounds and landing only 8, according to reports. His performance was described as lackluster, with some likening him to a stationary target or a punching bag. This lack of competitive spirit turned the fight into what many called a glorified sparring session, making it difficult to gauge Paul's true ability. While Paul secured a unanimous decision victory, the win did little to silence doubters who argue that his opponents are carefully selected to ensure his success. The backlash against the WBA's decision has been fierce. Boxing fans and insiders have taken to social media and other platforms to express their frustration, with some calling for a boycott of the organization. The sentiment is that ranking Paul so highly disrespects the countless fighters who have dedicated their lives to the sport, grinding through regional and international bouts to earn their place. These athletes, many of whom remain unranked despite facing far tougher opposition, feel sidelined in favor of a celebrity whose fame stems more from his online presence than his in-ring accomplishments. The WBA's move is seen as a transparent attempt to capitalize on Paul's ability to draw massive audiences and generate significant revenue, rather than a reflection of his boxing prowess. This controversy has sparked broader discussions about the state of boxing and its ranking systems. Some have suggested that the sport should adopt a unified belt system, similar to the UFC, where a single champion per division is recognized, and rankings are determined by a more transparent and merit-based process. Others argue that the existing sanctioning bodies, including the WBA, need to overhaul their ranking criteria to prioritize sporting integrity over financial incentives. The current system, where multiple belts and organizations create a convoluted hierarchy, allows for decisions like Paul's ranking to slip through, further eroding trust in the sport. Paul's rise has not been without its defenders, however. Some within the boxing community, including fighter Rayo Valenzuela, have acknowledged his efforts, noting that he has shown improvement in the ring and deserves credit for taking risks. Valenzuela's comments suggest that Paul's dedication to training and his ability to promote himself have earned him some respect, even if his opponents have been less than formidable. Supporters argue that Paul's presence brings new eyes to boxing, attracting casual fans who might not otherwise engage with the sport. His fights, often marketed as spectacles, generate significant pay-per-view revenue and media attention, which some see as a net positive for boxing's visibility. Yet, even these defenses are tempered by skepticism. Many believe that Paul's opponents are chosen strategically to ensure victories, with fighters like Chavez Jr. and Tyson selected for their name recognition rather than their current competitive ability. Accusations of scripted or prearranged outcomes have dogged Paul's career, with some pointing to his fight against Tyson as particularly suspect. Reports surfaced suggesting that Tyson was pulling punches and not fully engaging, leading to claims that the bout was more about entertainment than competition. While these allegations remain unproven, they fuel the perception that Paul's success is more orchestrated than organic. The financial aspect of Paul's career cannot be ignored. His ability to generate massive paydays has made him an attractive opponent for fighters looking to cash in, regardless of their rank or reputation. This dynamic has shifted the focus of some bouts from pure competition to business transactions, where opponents may prioritize a paycheck over a genuine effort to win. This trend threatens to undermine the values of honor and integrity that have long defined boxing, turning it into a spectacle driven by profit rather than sport. Paul's ambitions show no signs of slowing down, as evidenced by his public call-out of Canelo Alvarez for a cruiserweight world title fight. This bold move reflects both his confidence and his understanding of boxing's business side. A fight with Canelo, one of the sport's biggest stars, would undoubtedly be a massive payday and a chance for Paul to cement his legacy. However, critics argue that this call-out is more about generating headlines than pursuing a legitimate challenge, given the vast gap in skill and experience between the two. Canelo, a multi-division champion with a storied career, represents a level of competition that Paul has yet to face. The boxing community's frustration is compounded by the fact that Paul's ranking now positions him as a potential voluntary challenger for cruiserweight champion Zurdo Ramirez. This development has left many stunned, as it places Paul in a position to fight for a world title without having faced a single top-tier opponent. For genuine contenders who have spent years climbing the ranks, this feels like a slap in the face. The idea that a YouTuber-turned-boxer could leapfrog the traditional path of merit and challenge for a championship is seen as a travesty by those who value the sport's history and traditions. Former champions like Carl Froch have been vocal in their criticism, dismissing Paul as a clown fighter who lacks the skills to compete with elite boxers. Froch has challenged Paul to face someone like Alexander Usyk, the unified heavyweight champion, to prove his worth. Such a matchup would likely expose Paul's limitations, as Usyk's technical mastery and ring intelligence far surpass anything Paul has encountered. Froch's comments echo a broader sentiment that Paul's knockout power and overall ability have been overstated, given the quality of his opposition. The controversy surrounding Paul's ranking has also highlighted the role of sanctioning bodies in shaping boxing's narrative. The WBA's decision to rank Paul so highly is seen as a symptom of a larger issue, where financial interests often take precedence over sporting merit. This has led to calls for reform, with some suggesting that the sport needs to move away from the influence of multiple sanctioning bodies and toward a more unified and transparent system. Until such changes are made, decisions like Paul's ranking will continue to spark outrage and undermine the credibility of the sport. For fans, the anger is palpable. Social media platforms, including X, have been flooded with reactions from those who feel that boxing is being cheapened by Paul's presence. Some have even challenged him directly, with one fan declaring their willingness to step into the ring with Paul to give fans the real fight they deserve. This sentiment reflects a broader desire for authenticity in a sport that has increasingly been overshadowed by spectacle. As Jake Paul continues his boxing journey, the divide between his supporters and detractors grows wider. While his ability to draw attention and generate revenue is undeniable, his legitimacy as a boxer remains in question. Until he faces a credible, active contender in the cruiserweight division, the skepticism surrounding his ranking will persist. For now, the WBA's decision has cast a shadow over the sport, leaving many to wonder whether boxing can reclaim its integrity in an era where fame and fortune often outweigh skill and sacrifice.